Plus, we always had a variety of animals because of my brother.
Yes.
I can remember when I was about 8 years old, he asked me, "Do you have any of your allowance saved?" And I said, "Yeah, a little bit, you know." He says, "Well, I want a new pet." He said, "An opossum." And so he had an opossum shipped all the way out from North Carolina, I think it was, by train. I was part owner in it, and we made a few mistakes. Opossums never make a good pet, I can guarantee you. We had a porcupine for a pet. Oh, my goodness. A porcupine was a better pet than the opossum.
Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 196 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with an environmental specialist and the president of the Friends of Camano Island Parks organization. Please welcome Tom Eisenberg. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview local business owners, comedians, singers, and more. I dive into their backstory to find out how they got where they are, what are some of the tips for you to do the same, and find out where they are going. Tune in every week as I interview more of the people you see every day. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. Hope you guys are having a good week. Weekend was kind of a weird weekend. Thought it was going to be a lot more productive, and it just wasn't. But I guess that's fine. Still in the soccer season, so we had 2 games on Saturday and with the kiddos and, you know, all the different things going on this time of year. So, but things are going well here at the Commons. We're getting prepped. Mark your calendars for November. I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. November 3rd. That's a Friday, November 3rd, Friday, November 3rd, from 5 to 7, we are doing the Taste of the Marketplace. That is when we open the doors and you are able to try out a bunch of different things that we have available over the Christmas season. So different, some of our bakery stuff, some of the soups and mixes and dips that we carry. We've got Bit of Taste. Debbie, the owner of Bit of Taste, she'll be there with tasting her olive oils and vinegars and telling you how to pair them better and what other weird ways to use them. She always brings something new and exciting. So last year, I think it was, that she brought the crispy hot oil, which I'd never had before, and that became one of my favorite new items. So always something new there. We got live music. We got Lydia from The Loft doing a live painting during it. So just always a good time. This year we're doing a little bit different. We have tickets for sale. They are $5 a piece. And those are just going to go straight donation to the food bank. We're just trying to get a head count so we know how many people are coming. But come, hang out. And that way you also get to try out the different food and support the food bank. So it's a win-win-win, you know? Be sure to come out for that. But into this episode. So I got to interview Tom Eisenberg. And for those of you who don't know, he's the president of the Friends of Camano Island Parks organization. You may see them around. They are sometimes referred to as FOSIP, which I don't think they like that or not, but it's the one that we've given them. So, that happens in this area where people get, businesses or organizations get nicknames, and they're like, that's not my nickname. Well, it is now. But Tom, who has been the president of FOSIP, or Friends of Camano Island Parks organization, has been involved in that organization for a really long time, done a ton of work within the parks, and they really help out because the funding for parks and stuff like that is low, and so we really need these other organizations to be able to help out and help supply things and get volunteers together. Because there's not enough paid positions to cover all of the different things that happen for park maintenance and park protection and new policies and new ideas to keep the park safe, manicured? Is that the word? Yeah. And taken care of. So huge thank you to Tom for all the work and time that he's put into FOSIP, as well as this community. So super excited to have him on the podcast, hear his history, hear how he gotten started in parks and environmental stuff in general. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Tom Eisenberg. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with an environmental specialist, as well as the president of the Friends of Camano Island Parks organization. Welcome to the podcast, Tom Eisenberg.
All right, thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, so before we get started, tell us a little bit about Tom.
Well, after you don't have the time. After 85 years on this earth, you know, I just have had a real good time. That's all I can tell you. I'd rather be lucky than good, and so far my life has seen me through.
Nice. Very cool. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Everett, Washington, and
Okay.
I've been a Northwest person all of my life. I've traveled here, there, and around the world, and I always come back home. I like it here.
Yeah. What was it like growing up in Everett back then for you?
Oh, Everett was still pretty rural, especially where we were. We were south of town, and it was actually just a wonderful place to grow up. We didn't have the traffic that we have now, so kids could be kids, played street hockey, and we had a beautiful wooded area, not more than, not even a half a mile or a quarter mile away from our house, with a stream. And so parents were willing to let kids go do that sort of stuff, and so it was always a lot of fun, a lot of adventures, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Nice. So then, when you were growing up, was environmental things and was that on your mind, or were you just kind of living life?
Well, when you're a kid, you're just out to have fun and try new things. I had an older brother. He was 4 years older than I was. And, some people start out life, even as a child, knowing exactly what they want to do. My brother was that type of person. He wanted to be a veterinarian.
Okay.
And so 4 years older, he was so interested in animals and nature. When we'd go for a hike, which he was forced to take me on, of course, 4 years younger. But still, it was always an educational trip because he knew what he was looking at, and as a result, I learned too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So did you guys just hike around that area, or were you going up and down the North Cascade and stuff once with parents and stuff?
No, I tell you, in those days, families, if they did anything, they did something on a vacation.
Okay.
It just wasn't quite so mobile a society as it is today. But we had everything we needed right where we were at. And of course, as you get older, you start becoming more adventurous, and we extended our hiking trips to across to Pigeon Creek and Forest Park, and we found out that when you do that, you should always tell your mom and dad, because we ended up being gone for like 12 hours, and
Wow.
they were about ready to send out a search party, but it didn't stop us from doing it again. It was really a cool adventure. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then were you homeschooled, or did you go to high school down in Everett?
Homeschool wasn't a big thing. It was a necessity for some areas, but no, we went to public school, and we attended one of the oldest public schools in Everett, Lowell School.
Okay.
Just a small community right on the Snohomish River. It was preceded Everett. It was an older community, but it didn't have the deep water seaport, and so Everett, when it started, really became the populous center.
Okay.
So the schoolhouse was wood framed with a brick foundation, and turrets on all four corners with spires that went up.
Oh, wow.
I know, it looked like something out of, a movie of old times.
Yeah.
It was really something. And the third floor was already condemned when we were kids, but we continued to go through school. It was a blessing. When I-5 went through, it went right through the school.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah. So the year after I left, it's been a story of my life. I leave something that usually ends up disappearing.
Well, please don't leave Camano then.
No, I'm going to stay.
So, as you were going through high school then, as you were exiting high school, what was kind of your interest? What was your goals or plans for your next step?
Well, I didn't have any plans. In fact, my brother was a man with purpose, so it was already pre-planned for him. He was going to go to college. He was going to study zoology or veterinary, and he did exactly that. 4 years behind him, even the teachers I had taught him. They expected me to be the same type of student. No. But at any rate, to appease my parents, I did go to college, and I just was not a good fit. The lifestyle, everything about it, I liked real-world experiences, and so I went 1 year to the University of Washington, actually about a year and a half. Then I finished out an associate's degree at Everett Community College.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. What did you end up studying then?
I started out in fisheries
Okay.
because I love fishing, and when I started my second semester at the University of Washington, my counselor had me lined up to take government and poli-science.
Okay.
I asked him, I said, why would I in the world would I want to do it? He said, well, if you want a career in fisheries, you have to be able to work with public officials and politics, because there's a lot of politics involved.
Right.
Kind of shut my switch off right there. I wanted to work with fish, so that dream was popped.
Okay. So then what did you do? You said you finished with an associate's degree.
Yes.
What did you do after that?
After that, I decided to do what I wanted to do, and that was get on with living. So I got a job, and in the summers I had been working in sawmills to put myself through school. And believe it or not, in those days, 3 months' work in a mill would pretty much pay your tuition.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it. So
That's crazy.
Yeah, no student loans, nothing like that. And so the last job I'd had before I went for my associate's degree was a very well-paying job. It's what was called the Shingle Weavers Union.
Okay.
Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But weaving shingles, was the packing of the shingles so that you could make a bundle out of them.
Okay.
And it paid, you worked 6 hours, and anything over 6 hours was overtime, and you always worked overtime.
Okay.
And so I felt very cocky and very, very well-to-do, and I told my dad I wasn't going to go back to school. I was going to continue working. And he says, well, I tell you what, son, he says, I've worked for 40 years in the sawmills. He said, I know a lot of people, and he said, if you decide to do that, I'm going to have you blackballed so you'll never get a job. So at any rate, I didn't. I went to work for a petroleum depot in Mukilteo. It was a military installation.
Okay.
I liked that.
Nice. So what did you do there then?
They start you out doing everything from loading trucks with jet fuel. We were handling JP4. It was all military fuels, and 115, 145 octane high-test aviation fuels. And so, it went from the simpler things like loading trucks and loading tank cars to gauging tanks and taking samples. And I didn't realize what a big help that was going to be to me later on, because I was able to take a very well-paying job at a non-government refinery, and that's where I spent most of my career then,
Okay.
in the petroleum business.
Okay.
And that's how I got into the environmental end of it, too.
Yeah. How did that all connect together?
Well, I started working for Standard Oil of California, and they changed their name shortly to Chevron USA, but that was the name of the company when I started, a little depot down in Edmonds, Washington. And the environmental laws hadn't really kicked into effect. People were starting to become more and more aware that we have to take care of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I knew all about fishing. I knew all about the water, boats. I became involved as a volunteer in their spill response group.
Okay.
And as more pressure was put on the petroleum industry to be more proactive, it was just natural. They started putting it upon me to figure out a booming system for the docks and things like that. And we realized that the boat we had was inadequate, and so it's a lot of fun for me. I got to go down and help design a boat at Work Boats Northwest in Seattle. And
Wow.
at any rate, just by happenstance, I ended up being their environmental person, as well as doing my regular work. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. So how was that? It seems like a really pertinent time for the petroleum industry, because that was that issue has been obviously a big forefront of mind of when it comes to keeping green and stuff like that. For you, what were the things that you were seeing that they changed from doing something to doing in a better way?
Almost every process, we started examining it and finding out what we could do better. All from the get-go, the petroleum was expensive, and they didn't want spills even in those days.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times they would handle out-of-date products very carelessly. The way they dumped them and got rid of them didn't make much sense, and so that was easy to adjust to. And then we already had containment walls and things like that around the tanks, but we started getting in the habit of closing the scuppers when it wasn't raining, so even if there was an accidental leak. The other thing that I noticed when I started to get in charge was that nobody wanted to report a spill. And I thought, well, this is crazy. And I thought, I know why they don't want to, because it's such a small spill, but then that leads you to be complacent. And so when I had a little more authority, I made out the spill response list, and I insisted that everybody on the dock was to call that at least once a week.
Yep.
Make sure all the telephone numbers were still current and working. I also told them the rule was that if you had a spill and it made a sheen on the water, you had to report it.
Okay.
So even if you laid your dirty gloves down on a mud puddle, believe it or not, there's going to be a small sheen.
Okay.
So I told them, I said, listen, I want you guys to start reporting anything that's going to qualify. It doesn't have to be your dirty gloves, but if anything spills, report it.
Yeah.
And so they started doing that, and they became comfortable with doing it. Coast Guard knew them by name. In fact, the Coast Guard would tell them, please just call and register that you've had the spill and you've got it under control. Because before, the Coast Guard would respond, and when they'd respond, they'd see that we had adequately covered it, and so they trusted us to do that.
Nice.
And you have to be careful with things like that.
Yeah.
Because I ended up going to a symposium on the environment, and especially on oil spills, and every oil company was invited to it. We were going around doing introductions, and I introduced myself from Chevron, and a woman stood up and just started screaming at me, "You are the worst oil company in the world. You folks have more spills than any other oil company. You guys have to improve your methodology, And I was taken totally aback by it. I looked at her, I didn't know quite what to say. She said, do you realize that last year you had 25 spills, and Arco never had one, and Texaco never had one? And I looked at the crowd of petroleum people. I said, is there anyone here who honestly believes that Arco did not have one spill last year, or that Texaco did not have one spill?
Right.
I said, my defense, ma'am, I said, we report our spills. No matter how insignificant they seem, we report them.
Yeah.
And I said, now you're chewing me out for doing the right thing. But, you have to watch out, because it does go that way. People look at statistics and say, oh, my goodness, those are horrible people.
Right. Well, and that actually is one of the things I thought about. I was like, something that's not tracked doesn't get measured or thought about.
Yeah.
But once you start tracking it, it starts creating a data point, and then people
does.
just look at the top level like, oh, well, I saw this, instead of seeing the fact that no one else is actually doing that.
Yeah. And, it worked in a lot of ways for me. I took an early retirement. Golden handshake, as they used to call it, came out. They wanted to get rid of older employees who were making too much money, and I qualified. But I was only 52 years old, and I didn't really feel secure not going to work. And I was well known in the industry, and I had several offers to, hey, you're not working for Chevron anymore, come with us.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our jobbers made me a great offer, and they said, come on board. And I liked where they were at. They're just up here in Cedro Woolley. I was going to move to Camano Island, short commute. And so I took them up on it, and they said, well, now what would you like to do for us? And I said, I'd like to work your warehouse. I said, I'd like to load products into farmers and loggers' trucks and shoot the breeze with them. Oh, no, you can't do that. We need your expertise, But I worked for 3 weeks in Mount Vernon, and the head of sales was introducing me to customers, driving around, and got a phone call. This was when the cell phones were about the size of a box of pretzels with about 10 batteries in them, and he was very impressive with that. He got on it, and he says, "Oh, my God," and, "Oh, no." And he said, finally hung up, and he says, "Oh, Tom," he said, "I'm sorry." He said, "We're going to have to go to Ballard." He said, "There's been an oil spill down there." And I said, "What?" "Well, whatever you have to do." So we took off and got to Ballard and get out of the car, and he's just ranting. He says, "Oh, my gosh," he says, "this is so awful." He says, Coast Guard official was walking across the parking lot as we pulled up, and Joe waves at him, and he looks at me and says, "Eisenberg." He said, "Are you in charge of this?" And Joe turned around and looked at me and says, "No way." He said, "You can do this stuff?" I said, "Yeah, I can do this stuff." And so I no longer worked at Cedro Woolley. I was put in their Ballard office. And,
Okay.
but it was okay. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So you got to kind of pick up where you left off,
I
continue
did
with
indeed.
environmental, and
Yeah.
nice. Very cool. So then, when did you actually finally retire? Then.
I worked with them. I told them if I'd work 3 years. I guaranteed them 3 years, and if I was having fun, I'd continue. And at the end of 3 years, I wasn't having fun anymore because they were putting me into sales, and I didn't like that department. And so we parted ways on good terms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So then you finally hit retirement age. You got the whole world ahead of you.
Yes.
What'd you do then?
I started getting ready to move to Camano Island. Yeah, we bought the property in '74 and had used it as recreational property.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids had just loved it, and by that time the kids were all grown and making lives of their own. And we'd always talked about retiring at Camano Island.
Okay.
And you don't realize how fast time goes. As you get older, the clock gets wound up tighter and tighter.
Yep.
All of a sudden, it was time to start planning on going to Camano Island. Mentioned it to my wife, and she says, "No." Even though it had always been our plan. I said, "Why no?" And she says, "Well, our grandkids live less than a mile away." She said, "I won't get to see my grandkids anymore." And I said, "Trust me, we get a place on Camano Island, you'll have the grandkids more than you want." And so to encourage her, I built a scale model of our house with a roof that could be removed and little pieces of wood the size of furniture. So I wanted to get her involved and excited about this, and just wasn't working too good. So one day in the spring of '93, I said, or '94, excuse me, I told her, I said, "Just go up the property." We still went up there recreationally. I said, "I want to stake the house out just so you can kind of see what it'll look like." So we're staking it out, and she's holding the stakes, and I'm running the string, and we get through. And she's standing there. She says, "Well, where am I now in the house?" And I said, "Well, you're in the kitchen." And she said, "What's wrong?" "Oh, no. I'm not going to have a kitchen that looks this way." And I knew I was making headway. I said, "What do you need then?" I said, "See, you got to help me on this." So I had to flip the house completely over, which worked.
Nice.
So in 1994, she hasn't stopped thanking me for making the move to Camano.
Nice. How did you guys learn about Camano?
We were on a hunt for property. I knew about Camano from the 50s when it started to develop.
Okay.
Some of my mother's sisters had bought property up here, and we'd go up and visit it occasionally. Some of the properties were like Tyee Beach and things like that.
Yeah.
My dad always resisted buying up here, and he had his good reasons. But at any rate, yeah, my brother wanted a place out here. He'd been trapped on the East Coast all of his life after he graduated, following his career and the money, and never got back out on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So he and his wife started coming out here for their vacations. And I'd take him to Rosario and places like that.
Yeah.
Oh, she absolutely, a New York girl, she fell in love with the madrona trees and the salt water.
Yeah.
And she was rather wealthy, her dad was, and she said, "Tom, I'm going to make you a deal." She said, "You and Vicki find us acreage on the water, She said, we'll buy it, and she said, we'll keep it as a family retreat for everybody to use forever. So that was our goal. I couldn't pass it up. And we shopped all over the place, up in the San Juans, Whidbey Island, and even waterfront around Everett. And just by happy chance, we were looking at looking for an advertised piece of property, and couldn't find it. And we ended up going down Barnum Road by accident. And a buddy of mine was riding with us, and he says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" He said, "There's a for sale sign." And a little piece of plywood with hand-painted for sale on it that was all mossy. So I wrote down the phone number and made a phone call. An elderly woman answered. So what can I do for you? I said, well, I'm interested in your Camano Island property. Dead silence on the other end. She says, I have no Camano Island property. And I said, well, I found a for sale sign on a lot. And I said, it had this phone number on it. Another pause. She says, oh, that stinking husband of mine. She said, they'd been divorced for years, or he'd died. I never got into the particulars. But at any rate, she researched it and said, yes, I do have property. Yes, it is for sale. So $4,000 for each 2.25 acre lot. And we bought 4 of them. So we ended
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So that was really wonderful, and we really enjoyed it for a few years. And my brother told me, he said, you know, everything you do here, he said, that sweat equity, he said, we'll make you a 50% owner of the property, even though we're never going to divide it. And I said, well, that's fine. And it turned out that eternity was about 8 years, and he and his wife divorced.
Okay.
So it was no longer a family retreat, and we ended up with half of it. And so that's how we, like I said, I'd rather be lucky than good. I ended up with a beautiful lot on Triangle Cove. So.
Awesome. Very cool. So then upon moving here then, you know, have this environmental background. Was that something you were looking at when you were on Camano? Was it something you were really high priority?
Well, it was high priority. You know, we liked the woods, and we liked the natural setting, so it was perfect that we were able to get that piece of property. And it was just, you know, I've always had that, I was raised with that respect for nature. My dad was the same way as my brother, even though he wasn't college educated, but it was never there's a bird in the yard.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a robin, it's a blue jay. I don't know what that is. Let's look it up. It's a towhee, you know. And so when you have that type of an upbringing, plus we always had a variety of animals because of my brother.
Yes.
I can remember when I was about 8 years old, he asked me, do you have any of your allowance saved? And I said, yeah, a little bit, you know. He says, well, I want a new pet. He said, an opossum. And so he had an opossum shipped all the way out from North Carolina, I think it was, by train. I was part owner in it, and we made a few mistakes. Opossums never make a good pet, I can guarantee you. We had a porcupine for a pet. Oh, my goodness. A porcupine was a better pet than the possum was.
Wow.
We had all sorts of squirrels and ground squirrels. And as he got older and more sophisticated, actually, we kind of drifted apart, being 4 years apart. I was the kid.
Yeah.
And I was just 20 years old, and my brother was teaching in Berkeley, and got a phone call, and my dad answers the phone. He said, oh, so your brother wants to talk to you. Well, doesn't do that very often. Got on the phone. I said, you know, what's going on? He says, well, I'm going to have to write my doctorate this year. And he said, I am going to go to Mexico and trap exotic animals that have only been known by their skins at the Smithsonian Institute. And he said, I want to bring them back and study them. I thought, I'm just blown away. And I've got this job down at Mukilteo, you know, and got off the phone, and my dad said, what's going on? And I told him. He says, well, you're going. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, I have to, you know, quit my job. To start a summer and you're 20 years old, I want to go to the jungles of Mexico, you know. He says, when your brother calls, he says, you answer, you go. And so, called him back, called my boss. He said, oh, you can't leave now. And I said, well, I am. Well, your job's waiting for you. So I said, that was okay. And away we went. It was an experience certainly of a lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. So what type of, did you guys end up finding any animals? Or
Oh,
what,
yeah.
What you guys end up doing?
We both were wood savvy, and he knew exactly what type of conditions these animals like to live in. And so the two species we were after, they were both rodents. And the one lived in the high desert, and so we looked for them shortly after we got across the border. And the others lived in the rainforests of the south, and so we ended up in the tip of the Yucatan at the end.
Wow.
We were given the key to the city of the town that we stayed in. They hadn't seen a white person in 30 years.
Yeah.
So we were really pretty remote. We were just a few miles from the border with Guatemala.
Okay. Yeah.
And by the time I got down there, I was getting a little stir crazy because all I had was my brother to talk to. I hablé no español, you know. And so it was interesting in that town because one guy approached us almost immediately, and we'd gotten down there just months after the U-2 incident. If I don't know whether you remember that, that's when the Russians knocked out one of our spy planes.
Okay.
And we said, no, we didn't have spy planes and all this sort of stuff. And he thought we were a spy from the United States. He was a communist himself.
Okay.
And a firm believer in communism. And as it turned out, he could speak pretty good English. And so he was a very interesting person. I'd never met anybody quite like that. He was very suspicious of us, but it became apparent that we were too stupid to be spies. And he even brought over, he had one of those big transoceanic radios.
Yeah.
And just out of kindness, he brought it over there and left it in our motel room for us so that I could listen to Texas news and hear another American's voice. Pretty nice people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Did you guys end up finding both rodents then?
Yep. Got them all. Had a disaster with the first animals we caught. We were traveling in the daytime, and we never stopped to think that they're a nocturnal animal, and even though they live in the desert, they can't take the heat. And we had it in the back of a Nash Rambler. And we had towels over them to keep shade on them, but we lost the first catch that we had.
Okay.
My brother was out there tearing his hair. He was a very emotional guy. And I kind of found out why he took me, because we were quite opposite in dispositions.
Yeah.
Yet we got along great.
Yeah.
He drove a bit crazy because we started driving at night then, when it was cool, and we'd stay in a hotel or motel when it was heat of the day. And you say, well, here's the deal, Tom. He says, you drive first. And he said, then I'll take over. I said, okay. And so I'd drive until, like midnight. You start getting a little tired.
Yeah.
Tell him, okay, John, you can take over, Well, yeah, okay, Get over there. And then he couldn't stay awake. Talk to me. You got to talk to me. If I'm going to talk to you, I might just well drive, right? He was a great guy, but yeah, we did have a good time. We learned each other, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We were very, very close from that time on. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Very cool.
So we did bring back both species. Doctorate was a great success, and yeah, the rest is history. He became he became full professor or associate professor. Started out with the UBC, and within 2 years, I liked it when he was up in Canada. Within 2 years, he got an offer from the University of Maryland, and he went back there. And then his next offer was from the Smithsonian Institute, and the National Zoo. And so he did research work for them. Yeah,
nice.
Quite a career.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's
in fact,
great.
He and his wife were instrumental in bringing the pandas to the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, we got to go for the unveiling. Like I said, I've always been lucky. I've got absolutely a stunning wife. We were invited to go see the unveiling of the pandas at the zoo, and it was going to be at 10 o'clock. And they had the media all there, TV, everything. But my wife is not leaving the house until she looks just right. And so it took a little longer than we thought getting on the road. And it was raining, and of course we don't go in the main entrance. We go in the work access, and we go down the hall, and we get to see Ling Ling and Ding Ding or whatever their names were before they were released in their private pen. And then they released them to the public after that. Nobody knows what the real delay was, but I do. Yeah, the reporters are all stalling out there. They wanted it live. And
Wow. Very cool. That's awesome. So then how did you end up getting involved with the Friends of Camano Island and Parks?
yeah, well, the first couple of years I was on the island, you're getting settled. Brand new house. There was landscaping, garden to put in, a lot of detail work. But once that was done, I've always been kind of task orientated. I happened to see in the StanCam news that Center for Wooden Boats was going to have a boathouse at Camano Beach. And so I've always loved boats. I've built boats, and just thought that'd be fun. I'm going to go over there. So I went over and talked to the folks, and I started as a volunteer with the Center for Wooden Boats. Shortly thereafter, within a year, we used to have a street fair in May in Stanwood. It died, but it was a lot of fun. And Vicki and I, my wife, were walking the street, booth to booth, and two ladies were at a booth, and they saw me, and they came out and they said, "You're just a guy we're looking for." I said, "Really?" I said, "What did I do now?" And they said, "Well, we need somebody who'd like to work in the state parks." And so I thought, that sounds like fun. So I took on a volunteer position with them, too.
Okay.
And they didn't conflict with each other, and yeah, it worked out well.
Nice.
Yeah.
And was that with FOSIP?
Yeah. It
Okay.
was Friends of Camano Island Parks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then what did you start at? What was your role when you got started?
Well, with the Center for Wooden Boats, they were just trying to get volunteers, and so I probably kind of took the lead in getting volunteers.
Yep.
And they really did it the right way. They put in the newspaper. We're going to have a meeting at the multiple use building, and anybody interested in joining the volunteer group, and they listed categories that you can sit down and talk about and go from one to one or to the next, and if you found one you liked, that was it. So we had a grounds and buildings committee, we had a boat committee, we had a historical committee, and most people wanted to be on the boat committee because
Okay.
that's the fun thing.
Yeah.
At least they thought. And even before the park opened, we probably had more volunteers than they've ever had.
Yep.
We had about 25 to 30 volunteers,
Okay.
and we were able to stabilize the boathouse, repair the roof on it, inventory the boats. We took the lines off of every type of boat that's in there in case they'd like to reproduce one and use it and that sort of stuff. So, and we built the fleet of rowboats and sailboats.
Okay.
In that length of time too, because it took from 1994 when the park was acquired until 2008 for the park to open. So we had
Wow.
plenty
Okay.
of time. Yes.
2008. And just for our listeners, this is talking about this is Camano Island State Park.
No, this is Camano Beach.
This is Camano Beach. Okay.
Right, Camano Beach was acquired. Friends of Camano Island Parks formed as Friends of Cama to help lobby and transfer that state park instead of private ownership.
Okay.
And by the time I joined Friends of Camano Island Parks, they'd already changed their name. The park had been acquired, and they changed it to Friends of Camano Island Parks.
Okay.
And so Tuesdays I'd work with them, and weekends I'd work at the Center for Wooden Boats.
Okay. Nice.
Until they opened.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for FOSIP or Friends of Camano Islands Parks, what are considered underneath of their umbrella?
The properties?
Yeah.
Every piece of public property on Camano Island.
Okay.
So we help out at the Camano Center. We used to help out here at the Chamber of Commerce's property.
Yeah.
And of course, then we also help out at all county properties. So we have a total of, when we formed to get Camano Beach, there was less than 300 acres of public property. And I'm happy to say now part of our mission is acquisition. We've got 1,600 acres of property. So
Wow.
we're doing
okay.
something right.
Yeah. Very cool. So then how did you become the president of FOSIP?
Oh, yeah. Never make that mistake. No, honestly, if anybody's ever interested, the position will be open next June. This is my last
Really?
term. Yeah.
Wow.
12 years is enough. And and it's not because I don't enjoy it. It's just because it's getting to be too much for me.
Yeah.
You slow down, and your time becomes more precious.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm serving this one out. It's a wonderful organization. It's got the absolute best board and the best group of volunteers you could ever ask for. I've got between 20 and 30 volunteers that show up every Tuesday, and it keeps me jumping, just finding good, meaningful work for them. But on the other hand, just like today, we had a special project. In fact, just came from a special work party. And, all I have to do is make a couple of phone calls, and I've got people, yeah, I'll do that. Sure, let's do it, So we're working on a project now at Barnum Point.
Okay.
It's been in the works for over 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Submitted the plan, and it takes a very, 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 very long time for something to go through all the processes of the county.
Yep.
And so we just got informed that we can do it now, about 2 weeks ago, and so
Nice.
that's our next one.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for 12 years. That's a long time to be serving in a volunteer position.
All right. Well, let's
for
put it this
community.
way. I've been in the parks longer than any person in the parks.
Wow.
So, yeah, I started with the FOSIPs in 95.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, very cool. That's awesome. Really appreciate all the work that you've done to really continue to for Camano to be what people see it as.
Yeah, well, it's been my pleasure. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful place to work and good people.
Yeah.
Island's got a small town atmosphere to it even to this day, and I think people appreciate that.
Yeah.
People are willing to help out.
Yeah, that's really cool. So for you then, what maybe this is a good advertisement. What does a typical day as a president look like for you then?
Well, trying to avoid doing FOSIP's work, trying to work in a day of crabbing or a day of fishing. No, but typically checking emails and responding to those that require it, and that really isn't such a chore. But making sure that the job is lined up and ready to go, materials are there. Somebody is there that knows how to do the job and can supervise it. Those do keep you jumping, and making sure that the materials are all purchased and ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beside the normal work parties, I put in right around between 30 and 50 hours a month.
Okay.
So it's not that bad.
Yeah. It's still a decent amount though.
Yeah.
So if you have friends or family visiting this area that aren't normally from here, what do you what's kind of your tour that you give them?
I'll take them where they want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I give them multiple choice, depending on their age, physical abilities, and things like that. But, yeah, sometimes it's just to drive around the island to let them see what it's like and the nature of it, and point out where they're at.
Yeah.
That's Woodby Island. This is Camano Island. That's the big island. We're the good island,
Nice. What are some interesting Camano Island park facts?
What's that?
What are some interesting Camano Island park facts?
Parks facts?
Yes, that's a hard thing to
Oh,
say.
no, that's quite all right. No, it would be hard to single out anything. Each park is unique, and that's why you're never going to get tired of going to the parks. Everything from terrain, vegetation, water, fresh water, salt water. That's just the beauty of our parks. We've got it all. And good trails made by good people.
Yeah.
And maintained by good people.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually I like to take them to Barnum because it's close to us, and we used to be able to walk there.
Yeah.
Now we do drive around the parking lot, but yeah,
Nice.
it's my favorite.
Yeah. What are some of the wildlife that you frequently encounter out there?
you know, uh, you just have to be very observant to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of people see the obvious and miss the details. The easiest thing to see is our deer.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of deer. And by the way, we have a white one again this year
Okay.
at our place. Well, and it's also seen on Barnum, too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an albino. It is truly a white deer. It has a dark nose. It's got dark eyes. And
Really?
Yeah. This is the second one in the last 3 years. The first one didn't survive very long for whatever reasons. There's a high mortality rate with fawns. But this one is now getting good sized and seems pretty well able to take care of himself. Coyotes, you'll see those often, and they're pretty easily identified. The small stuff is what goes unobserved a lot of times. Here recently, I see weasels.
Okay.
They'll dart across a road. Most people see it and think it's a funny-looking squirrel, but it's not. And right now, we had a National Geographic moment in our backyard. In respect of, we have, of course, our native little red squirrels. And my wife yelled at me. I was on the computer, and she said, "Get out here and see what's going on." And I went out to the kitchen and looked out the window, and she said, "There's a bird up there, and there's the squirrels up there, and they seem to be harassing each other." And I thought, well, a crow maybe, and I'm looking, and I see a bird fly out of the backside of the tree. I can't tell what it is, but we have band-tailed pigeons right now, about the size of a pigeon. I thought, well, it's a band-tailed pigeon, but that doesn't make any sense. And she said, "No, there's 2 of them." And all of a sudden, the bird hops around to the exposed side of the tree, and it was a Cooper's hawk.
Okay.
And this is a life and death situation with the squirrel. It's above the squirrel, and the squirrel is below a naked trunk with grass around it. So if he drops down to the ground, he's in big trouble, and he knows it. And he's going around on one side, and the hawk is following him as best it can. And my wife, she couldn't take it. She says, "I'm going to break this up." And I said, "Honey," I said, "it's all part of nature. We got plenty of squirrels." "Yeah, but this could be one I like. So she shooed it away, and it still wouldn't leave.
Yep.
It distracted it enough to where the squirrel was able to make an escape. But still, that's part of living on the island. You see these natural situations occur.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also saw a young coyote the other day, too, go through the yard. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that time of year the youngsters are getting pushed out and around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool.
Of course, diverse birding. If a person is all interested in birding,
Yeah.
Both Iversons and Barnum Point have very extensive bird lists of serious birders. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So another question that kind of goes along more with the environmental side. Over the course of time that you've lived here, have you noticed big changes in like the climate as far as weather and how winters and summers and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
the biggest things I've noticed are, even though our rainfall average is roughly the same,
yeah.
it's when we get it and how we get it.
Okay.
We used to be known for our drizzle.
Yeah.
You might go a week, or sometimes in the Seattle area where they were so conscious of the weather. I remember sometimes there would be 30 days with a sprinkle every day. Well, that light, slow application of the waters is what we need, because that gives it a chance to sink in and it doesn't run off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we get our rains in episodes, like a tropical rainfall.
Yeah.
Very intense, and as a result, a lot of it washes away. It goes down storm drains, out into the bay, and doesn't go down through the soil. And as a result, our trees are paying the price for it.
Yeah.
So even though people look at the statistics and say, well, the rainfall is, it hasn't changed that much, it has changed. And the other thing is, same thing's true of our wind. we're having more episodes of strong winds.
Yeah.
And as a result, the trees are getting knocked over. They're distressed to begin with. And I notice it because I'm out there clearing trails of debris, and
Right.
it's changed dramatically in the last 30 years, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Today, when a big fir tree comes over, in the past, there'd be a huge root ball that would come up, 12 feet or higher.
Wow.
And
okay.
now when they come over, a lot of times there's no root ball at all. So the roots are actually, have what we call root rot that's going through the conifers, and roots are getting decayed and prematurely, and over the tree goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
You asked for it, I gave it to you.
Yeah. So in that then, what's, as far as what you're seeing, is that kind of a natural, because I know climate does change a little bit up and down over time.
Absolutely.
Is it a natural that you think you're seeing, or is it the decrease in tree population? Is it global warming? What are the things that you kind of attribute to the changes?
Well, because of the rapid change, over my lifetime, it's been gradual. And then here in the last 15 years, it's like it's accelerating.
Yeah.
The change is accelerating.
Yeah.
And you see the statistics, scientific stats. Our oceans are warming. That's not good. You know. And oxygen's being depleted in the water. The other thing is our demand for water. It's just, we are always trying to satisfy ourselves, which is just human nature, and that's why we get in trouble.
Yeah.
The first time I went down to Arizona after I retired, that would have been in the 90s, early 90s, I couldn't believe those deserts around Yuma, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
They'd flood, irrigate them to grow iceberg lettuce. And I thought, my God, that's a horrible waste of water for a food that you could starve to death eating on, just for the luxury of a little crunch in your salad. And now they're paying the price for it down there. Water is really becoming dear. And we've always wondered what happened to civilizations. What happened to the Mayans? What happened to the Egyptians? Well, I think we're kind of seeing it.
Yeah.
You start building big cities, you get high densities of population, and with that, problems come up.
So we like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months?
$100 or less? Okay. I'm not much for buying things.
Uh-huh.
I got a heavy Lee shirt jacket
Nice.
from Costco. Well, I like it.
Perfect. That's a great option.
It's just dressy enough to be able to go places, and yet it's warm and functional.
Yes. Yes.
And it was definitely less than $100.
Right. All right. Who is the most influential person outside of your family in your life?
Oh, gosh. I've been influenced by everybody I met.
Mm-hmm.
I found out a long time ago that whether you like them or not, you have to study why you like them or why you don't like them. And I found out growing up in the workforce that when you ended up in a bad situation, you really hated that person. But if you sat back and said, what role did I play in this?
Mm-hmm.
You were part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't 100% them.
Right.
And then, just learning from these little instances teaches you how to navigate life better.
Yeah.
With less conflicts and less problems. And after a while, you can see the people that have problems and are a little easily inflamed. And you can either, avoid them or get another job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's been a few people. I'll tell you somebody who influenced me.
Yeah.
Your dad.
Yeah.
He was, or is, genuinely a nice person. And he came up here with a vision.
Yep.
And he worked hard at it, and he put all the pieces of that puzzle together, except he was about 10 years too soon. Our population just wasn't ready for it. But what a beautiful idea to have a nice coffee shop where people could sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a little verbal exchange, and make life a little better.
Yeah.
No, he was a fine guy.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. This is a fill in the blank question. I know this is weird, but I've always wanted to blank.
Okay. This is too simple, I know. But I told you that I never knew what I wanted to be.
Yeah?
Yet my brother always did. And so they expected me to have the answer. And I did have the answer.
Yeah?
Even at the age of 18. What do you want to be, Tom? I want to grow up to be a happy old man.
Awesome. Have you been successful in that then?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
That's thanks to my wonderful wife, too.
Very cool. That's awesome. Who is an interesting or fascinating person that I should interview next?
Ooh, we're full of very interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
How about Jeff Wheeler? Or have you done Jeff?
No, I haven't. I've heard a lot about him, and I've heard a lot of different things, and he's been suggested before, so I'll definitely put him on a
make sure
priority.
Allow yourself at least as much time as you did with me. No, Jeff's a great guy, and he'd be a good person to interview. My vice president, Jay McFetters, would be almost any of my volunteers. They're just a fascinating bunch of people who are willing to give their time to make the island a better place.
All right, perfect. All right, and lastly, what piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Well, it just goes on and on, doesn't it? I guess I'd give him the advice that I gave my 20-year-old son. And that was to do your best always.
Mm.
If you're on a job that you don't like, quit it. If you're on a job that's difficult, see it through. And you'll gain experience and you'll gain wisdom by doing it.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do.
No. It's very simple sounding, but very difficult in practice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Tom.
No, it's my pleasure, Brandon. I appreciate you thinking of me.
Yeah. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Tom Eisenberg for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. Don't forget to get your tickets to Taste of the Marketplace this coming Friday, right? Next coming Friday, not this coming Friday. Next Friday, November 3rd at 5 p.m. Be sure to get your tickets. All proceeds go to the Stanwood Camano Food Bank. So it's a great way to donate to them and get some food and hang out with some people. Lots of exciting stuff. I will have the ticket link down below in the show notes. But either words, thank you guys for listening, and I will see you on the next one.